The greatest chariot battle. The Battle of Kadesh did Ramesses. I win or lose. The truth behind the great lie. This is the story of the largest battle of the ancient world, where over 5,000 horse-drawn chariots collided in a fierce duel on the Syrian desert. On one side stood the Egyptian Empire, led by Pharaoh Ramesses the Great. On the other, the mysterious Hittite superpower. Ramesses II declared a triumphant victory, a victory he had carved into every temple wall, from Karnak to Abu Simbel. But if he was so completely victorious, why did he immediately rush to sign a peace treaty with the very enemy he claimed to have annihilated? Today, we will look beyond the grand propaganda of the pharaoh, analyzing evidence from both sides, Egyptian and Hittite, to find the truth behind the Battle of Kadesh and uncover why the reality of the world's first documented victory was a perfectly orchestrated lie. If you are ready to explore the difference between history and propaganda, subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. Part I. The fateful conflict and chariot technology. The Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE was no random skirmish. It was the culmination of nearly a century of tension between two superpowers vying for control over the Levant, the crucial lands of Syria and Palestine. Kadesh's strategic importance. For Egypt, controlling the Levant was key to securing its northern borders and guaranteeing vital trade routes. Kadesh, situated at an important crossroads on the Orontes River in Syria, was an indispensable strategic stronghold. Whoever controlled Kadesh controlled the gateway between the two empires. After King Muwatalli II of the Hittites reclaimed Kadesh, Ramesses II, a young and ambitious pharaoh, could not accept the humiliation. He personally decided to lead an army of unprecedented size to reclaim honor and territory. Cutting-edge chariot technology. The battlefield of Kadesh was a showcase for the most sophisticated weapon of the time, the horse-drawn chariot. Egyptian chariots, generally lighter, two-wheeled, drawn by two horses, and carried two people, a driver and an archer. Their lightweight design allowed for high speed, ideal for quick strikes and rapid retreats. Hittite chariots, heavier, carried three people, a driver, an archer, and a shield bearer. Though slower, they were more powerful and resilient, functioning like ancient tanks. Ramesses II mobilized an army of approximately 20,000 men, divided into four large divisions, each named after a deity: Amun, Ra, Ptah, and Set. He personally led the elite Amun division. Part 2. The perfect intelligence trap and the Ra division's disaster. Overconfidence, a lack of caution, and a brilliant intelligence campaign by the enemy almost destroyed Ramesses II's campaign. A grave military error. As Ramesses II and the Amun division approached Kadesh, they captured two Hittite scouts. Under duress, the two reported that the entire Hittite army was still hundreds of miles away, hiding in Aleppo. Ramesses II blindly believed this testimony, assuming he could capture Kadesh before the Hittite army arrived. He committed the most fundamental tactical error, marching rapidly and establishing camp without waiting for his three remaining divisions. The horrifying truth was, the entire Hittite army, under the command of King Muwatalli II, was hidden right behind the city of Kadesh. The two scouts were merely bait in a meticulously planned deception, the ambush that destroyed the Ra division. While the Amun division was making camp and the Ra division was marching hastily to catch up with the pharaoh, King Muwatalli II launched the perfect ambush. Thousands of Hittite chariots stormed across the Orontes River and plunged directly into the flank of the unsuspecting Ra division. The Ra division, the second Egyptian army, was caught completely by surprise. They were utterly crushed, scattering in panic and disorder. The survivors of the Ra division fled toward Ramesses' camp, bringing chaos and news of the disaster directly into the heart of the Egyptian command. Part 3. Ramesses' battle for survival. The chaos from the Ra division spilled into the Amun division's camp, turning the resting soldiers into a desperate scramble. Ramesses II was quickly surrounded. Ramesses, the personal fight. This was the defining moment that Ramesses II later immortalized on his temple walls. Isolated from reinforcements, the pharaoh found himself left with only his royal bodyguard. He was forced to fight personally. The Egyptian reliefs depict Ramesses as a superhuman hero, fighting alone on his chariot, firing arrows incessantly, divinely protected. While this is clearly propagandistic exaggeration, records indicate that Ramesses II displayed extraordinary courage, personally leading his bodyguards in a desperate countercharge against the Hittite ranks infiltrating the camp. Ramesses II's tactic was to attack the flank of the Hittite army, using the speed of the Egyptian chariots to avoid being overwhelmed by the heavier Hittite armor. The miraculous intervention of the Naaran division. When all seemed lost, an unexpected event saved the day: the timely arrival of the Naaran division. This was an elite contingent of Egyptian and Canaanite troops who had been marching along the coast. The Naaran division crashed into the flank and rear of the Hittite forces, who were preoccupied with looting the Egyptian camp. Taken by surprise from behind, the Hittite army was cut in two, forcing them into a hurried retreat back toward Kadesh. The intervention of the Naaran saved Ramesses II's life and prevented the total catastrophic defeat of the entire Egyptian force. Part IV. The Kadesh Treaty and the truth of the stalemate. Following that brutal day of fighting, both armies were significantly weakened. Although Ramesses II survived and repelled the assault, he failed to capture Kadesh. Muwatalli II was also unable to annihilate Ramesses II. Tactical failure. Propaganda victory. When Ramesses II returned to Egypt, he declared a magnificent victory. Egyptian propaganda. Carved onto massive temples, Ramesseum, Karnak, Abu Simbel. The reliefs show a supernaturally large Ramesses II trampling his enemies. Tactical reality. Egypt suffered heavy losses and failed its strategic objective of capturing Kadesh. Ramesses II was forced to withdraw without achieving his goal. King Muwatalli II, meanwhile, held Kadesh and declared that Egypt had retreated in shame. The First Peace Treaty. 16 years after the battle, Ramesses II and the Hittite successor signed the Treaty of Kadesh, 1258 BCE. This is one of the oldest international peace treaties recorded. The treaty text was found on both Hittite clay tablets at Hattusa, modern-day Turkey, and on Egyptian temple walls. Content. The treaty stipulated mutual non-aggression, common defense against external enemies, and the extradition of political refugees. This treaty was not a victory for one side, but a candid acknowledgement that both superpowers were exhausted and required stability to deal with internal issues and rising external threats, such as the Sea Peoples. The treaty was a genuine diplomatic success. Conclusion. Ramesses II's success at Kadesh was not a military victory, but a propaganda victory, and a triumph of extraordinary personal survival on the battlefield. The truth was an expensive draw that resulted in the world's first great peace treaty. Who was the real hero at Kadesh? The brave Ramesses II, or the timely intervening Naaran force? Comment Kadesh below. If you love historical investigations that require deep analysis, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. The Forgotten Empire of Kush. The Black Pharaohs who saved ancient Egypt. We are taught that the history of Egypt ended with the decline of the great pharaohs. But the truth is, as the Black Land collapsed into chaos and fragmentation, a civilization in the south rose to prominence. They were the Kushites, hailing from Nubia, a little-known empire that built more pyramids than Egypt itself and once crowned black pharaohs to save ancient religious traditions. This is the story of the 25th dynasty, the tale of the kings who reversed history, conquered the north, and fought tirelessly to preserve a culture that wasn't originally their own. This is the epic of the forgotten Kushite Empire. Join Ancient Chronicle as we uncover the truth behind the Black Pharaohs and the proud kingdom hidden beyond the Nile's rapids. If you are ready to explore this lost history, subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter of the ancient world. Part I. The land that fed the gold and the rise of Napata. To understand the Kushite Empire, we must discard the notion that Nubia, the land of the Kushites, was merely a simple colony. It was a trade partner, a military rival, and, above all, a wealth powerhouse. The source of gold and the fateful conflict. The Egyptian word for Nubia likely derived from Nub, meaning gold. This region was the most important supplier of gold, ivory, precious wood, and leopard skins for the Egyptian pharaohs. This very gold fueled the power of the pharaohs for millennia. However, this relationship was frequently dominated by Egyptian colonialism, where pharaohs would often occupy and build massive fortresses to control the vital trade routes. During the New Kingdom period, c. 1000, 551,070 BCE, the Egyptians imposed their culture, religion, and language on Nubia. But rather than erasing local identity, this created a bilingual and bicultural Kushite aristocracy who worshipped Egyptian gods like Amun, but also cherished their own heritage. As Egypt began to decline after 1000 BCE, the chaos and fragmentation in the north allowed Kushite power to surge. The birth of the Kingdom of Napata. Around 750 BCE, the Kushites established their independent kingdom, with its capital at Napata, near Gebel Barkal, a sacred mountain. The Kushite kings saw themselves as the spiritual successors and the last defenders of pure, ancient Egyptian culture. They believed that the pharaohs in the north, who were then ruled by Libyan warlords and weak factions, had corrupted Ma'at, order and justice, and undermined the great cult of Amun. Piye, the Kushite king who founded the dynasty, was not merely a king. He was a religious reformer who viewed his mission as restoring the divine order to the entire Nile Valley. Part 2. The 25th Dynasty, the Crusade of Restoration. In 730 BCE, King Piye decided to act. His invasion was not a conventional imperial conquest. It was a religious crusade aimed at rescuing Egypt from its own spiritual decay. The religious conquest of King Piye. The ancient Egyptian texts recording Piye's conquest, known as the Victory Stela, document his actions not with arrogance, but with deep religious piety. Piye ordered his troops to purify themselves and perform ritual sacrifices to the god Amun before entering battle, emphasizing that their war was to restore the divine, not to plunder. Piye swiftly swept aside the Libyan lords and unified all of Egypt. He personally traveled to Memphis, where he received the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, becoming the pharaoh of the 25th dynasty, the dynasty of the Black Pharaohs. Cultural and artistic renaissance. The Kushite pharaohs were not barbaric invaders, they were cultural conservators. When they ruled Egypt, they initiated a period often called the Kushite Renaissance. Architecture. They restored and rebuilt ancient temples, like Karnak, that had been neglected. Art. They brought Egyptian art back to the classical style of the Old Kingdom, shedding the ostentation and disorder of the declining periods. Religion. They actively fought religious defilement and fiercely protected the cult of Amun, demonstrating more fidelity to tradition than the native pharaohs who preceded them. Under their rule, Egypt was united and stabilized under one central authority for the first time in centuries. The distinctive crown. To differentiate themselves from the native pharaohs who had failed to protect Ma'at, the Kushite pharaohs wore a distinct crown. The Kushite skull cap, featuring two cobras, uraeus, on the brow, instead of one. This dual cobra symbolized their dominion over two lands, Kush and Egypt. Their confidence in their racial and cultural identity was absolute. If you are captivated by this historical reversal, please leave a like and comment Kush now. Your support is the driving force that allows Ancient Chronicle to continue digging into these forgotten truths. Part 3. The Pyramids of Meroe and the Power of the Kandakis. The 25th dynasty's rule in Egypt ended due to pressure from a new enemy, the Assyrian Empire. Though pushed back to the south, the Kushites did not dissolve. Instead, they moved their capital further south to Meroe and began a brilliant cultural period that lasted nearly 1,000 years, the Valley of Pyramids. Meroe became the new capital and the hub of an empire that continued to prosper through the iron industry and African commerce. The most striking aspect of the Kushite legacy at Meroe is the pyramids. The Kushites built over 250 pyramids in Meroe and surrounding areas, a number far greater than the total built in Egypt, around 138. Architecture. Kushite pyramids were distinctly different. They were smaller, had narrower bases, and featured a much steeper angle, often 70 degrees compared to the 45 to 50 degrees of Egypt. They were built not as monumental labor projects, but as private burial places for their kings and queens. Longevity. They continued to build pyramids until the 4th century CE, long after Egypt had abandoned the tradition. Unique culture. The lion god and the queen mothers. In Meroe, Kushite culture evolved into a unique identity. They still worshipped Amun, but they incorporated their own deities. The most important was Apadimak, the Kushite god of war and fertility, depicted as a powerful lion god. Meroitic script. They developed their own written language, no longer solely dependent on Egyptian hieroglyphs, although much of it remains undeciphered today. Notably, the Kandakes, queen mothers, frequently acted as co-rulers, or powerful rulers in their own right. Some Kandakes are depicted as fierce warrior queens, demonstrating the strength of women in the Kushite political and military system. Part, decline, legacy, and the shadow of history. The Kushite rule in Egypt ended in the 7th century BCE, under the immense military pressure of the Assyrian Empire, whose iron weapons proved superior. The last Kushite pharaohs were forced to retreat to Napata and Meroe. The curse of preservation. The tragic truth is, the 25th dynasty failed in their war against Assyria, but they succeeded in saving Egyptian culture. Without their intervention and preservation, many religious and artistic traditions might have been lost forever during the preceding era of chaos. Yet, this very devout focus on the past was their curse. As they retreated south, they became too isolated from the developing Mediterranean powers, gradually becoming a forgotten Egypt. The Kushite Empire finally collapsed in the 4th century CE due to a combination of economic decline, loss of trade routes, and the invasion by the Kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia. The forgotten legacy. Today, when we think of the great history of the Nile Valley, our minds stop at Giza and Luxor. But we must remember the black pharaohs of Kush, the ones who fought for a culture that was not their own, who built a civilization far more brilliant than Western history books often acknowledge. They were preservers of tradition, builders of pyramids, and kings who reversed the currents of history. They saved Egypt, only to be obscured by Egyptian history itself. Who do you think was the greatest pharaoh of the 25th dynasty? Comment Pie or Shabaka below. If you are captivated by historical mysteries that demand deep analysis, don't forget to subscribe to the Ancient Chronicle channel to continue our journey of uncovering the forgotten truths